The Agency is the latest espionage spy thriller on Paramount+, a show that's methodically slow-paced but also pretty tense, with a solid storyline and some excellent acting throughout. There are a couple of plot holes, and if you've seen the French show this one is based on, the American remake is not going to hold a candle to that, but these gripes aside, The Agency is certainly worth a watch. The main hook of the show centres on intelligence officers behind enemy lines, putting on a facade and building a life, all under the guise of extracting information from their targets. Then, like a ghost, they up and leave, back to the CIA to be debriefed before being thrown back in the field again for their next operation. The senior officer we follow through the show is called Martian, whose real name is Paul Lewis. He's away on a top secret mission in Ethiopia, where he spent the last 6 years extracting information for the guys back home. However, what he didn't bank on was falling in love with a woman called Samia Zahir. When Martian does return to the UK, he breaks protocol and decides to contact Sammy again. The thing is, he's not sure if she's actually part of the same game he is, and could well be an undercover agent herself. What ensues from here is a tense game of cat and mouse, as Martian continues to let his feelings betray his training. Unfortunately, when Martian and Sammy do cross paths, they do so with newfound suspicion from a guy called Osman. He knows there's something not quite right with this man and sets out to discover exactly what Martian may be hiding, to devastating effect. Conversely though, Martian's handler at the CIA, Naomi, also suspects there's something going on, but she's got her hands full as she handles a rookie agent, which we'll circle back to shortly. Interwoven around Martian's storyline is a more widespread threat involving an agent named Coyote. The first time we see this guy, he's joyriding through Minsk after going rogue and ends up captured by the authorities. Given Coyote was not much of a drinker and seems to have gone completely off grid, this is very much out of character. It's certainly no coincidence that the Russians are up to no good and could well be involved, prompting a tense race against time to ensue, as the CIA scramble to get their man back, all whilst hoping for the best that he doesn't crack and reveal years of secrets to a foreign agency. That is, if he's not already working with them. These two plots do a pretty good job of intersecting and building tension, especially toward the end of the show as the respective plot lines start to build toward the climactic and very exciting finish line. However, there are a couple of contrivances and plot holes that will leave you scratching your head. I've said this before, but if a show has a deliberately slow pace, it needs to be well written and tightly wound, because otherwise audiences will start to question the set pieces in more detail. At one point, for example, Osman has his goons follow Martian as he goes about his day. However, they only follow him when he's posing as Paul, not when he's Martian. This is a particular problem because in all that time they don't once see this guy go into the CIA building, really? To be fair, there's one instance where Paul does lose them, but it all feels a bit too convenient. Similarly, Paul Lewis's cover is that he's an aspiring author who's looking to write a book. At one point, he heads into a publisher's office, knowing he's being followed, but the agents never follow up to see if any of the publishers have heard of him. These sort of moments hold this back from being a massive hit, but your mileage with these sort of plot issues and contrivances will certainly vary. A bigger eye-rolling moment though comes late on, where the CIA decide to bug a pair of boots for a high-profile target, but they do so by switching well-worn military boots with brand new ones. And yes, as you may expect, this goes about as well as you may think. These sort of moments are dotted throughout the show, and they certainly make you second guess the credentials of these seasoned individuals. There is a third storyline here too, which I mentioned earlier about Naomi and the rookie agent, but honestly, there's not much to write home about here, and it's easily the worst part of the whole show. Here we follow Danny, a brand new agent who's designed solely to give us exposition about the recruiting process and the slow degradation of humanity as you become one of these agents. Her handler is obviously Naomi, who basically handholds her through the process for the first half of the show, but Danny's story never really goes anywhere. In fact, late on there's an interrogation scene that Danny manages to get through solely because Naomi gives her a prompt an episode prior, and it all feels a bit too convenient. Danny's whole mission across the 10 episodes is to basically become good enough to be the assistant for a professor on a trip out to Iraq, and that's it. Given the show has already been renewed for season 2, I'd imagine this will probably play a larger part of the sophomore season, but in its current state, every time Danny is on screen, it just feels like wasted time. We don't really glean anything from this storyline either, although to be fair, a couple of questionable moral decisions do hark back into the shades of grey the agency plays with as its core themes. But then we already see that with characters like Martian and Samir, so it does feel a bit redundant. There's certainly some big stars in this that do a solid job with the material given. Michael Fassbender puts in an excellent performance as Martian, with some close-up shots showing the confliction he's plagued with in all its ugly glory. Alongside him, we also have Richard Gere, Jodie Turner-Smith, Jeffrey Wright, and Kurt Eggeowan, who step effortlessly into their roles. The big elephant in the room though is going to be the French version this is based on. It's head and shoulders above this, goes for 5 seasons, and has an excellent pacing throughout. As a remake, The Agency isn't bad, but fans of the original are probably going to have a hard time getting into this one without drawing big comparisons. The pacing here is definitely slower, and there's also more action set pieces, but if you can take to the first 2 to 3 episodes, you're probably going to have a good time with this one. And yes, this does hold up much better as a binge watch than it does watching one a week. Aesthetically, The Agency looks great too. There's some solid camera work here and the editing is smartly done to ratchet up the tension. There are a lot of interior scenes as one may expect from a show like this, but the sets are dressed well and there's a conscious effort done to busy every scene. At times this does feel a bit like overkill though, like the show creators didn't have enough faith in the massive exposition from time to time that they needed to try and keep audiences invested with bright shiny lights. But it's a minor point all things considered. However, it's not all busy hallways and walk and talk scenes, as there are some decent action sequences in here as well, which are similarly well shot. Toward the end there's an operation that goes down in Eastern Europe which flips back and forth between the field and the agency, while the middle of the show features some thrilling chase sequences including on foot and on a motorcycle. The minimalist soundtrack feels like the metaphorical cherry atop this cake, and the tracks chosen for the eerie intense sequences work very well to accentuate the emotions on screen. There are also a couple of montage sequences featuring bigger named artists, and for the most part the music does a great job in complementing the mood of this one. There have been a lot of spy thrillers on TV recently, and while The Agency isn't as bombastic as something like Day of the Jackal, it's arguably better than that one in its overall execution. The deliberately slow pace won't be for everyone, and yes, there are also some plot holes here too. For the most part though, this is a tense espionage thriller with enough in the tank across its 10 episodes to make for an easy recommendation. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.